In the outer rim of the Andromeda Galaxy, a fleet of ships silently drifted in the void. These vessels, worn by time and space, bore the scars of countless battles fought long before the current era of peace. This was the Ghost Fleet, a legendary armada thought to be a mere myth, whispered about in the dark corners of spaceports and academic circles. Commander Eliana Voss stirred from her stasis pod aboard the flagship Eternal Vigil. As the lid hissed open, the cold air of the ship's bridge caressed her skin, her eyes adjusting to the dim lighting, focused on the holographic displays flickering to life. Around her, the rest of the crew emerged from their own pods, equally disoriented, but quickly regaining their bearings. "Status report," Eliana croaked, her voice echoing slightly in the spacious command center. Lieutenant Harrow, the ship's AI liaison, approached with a data pad. "Commander, all systems are operational. The fleet remains hidden within the nebula of shadows as programmed. However, there is an anomaly." "What kind of anomaly?" Eliana asked, stepping down from the platform, her legs steady despite centuries of slumber. "It appears a distress signal has been intercepted. It's weak, but it's there. Galactic coordinates suggest it's coming from the Terran sector." Eliana paused, processing the information. The Terran sector was now a bustling hub of commerce and diplomacy, a stark contrast to its troubled past. Why would a distress call originate from there? "Display the coordinates on the main screen, and get me a direct line to Admiral Rax," she ordered. As the crew hustled to fulfill her commands, Eliana walked to the main viewport, gazing out at the nebula that shrouded their fleet. The swirling gases of blue and purple masked the silent sentinels from prying eyes, hiding them as effectively as any cloaking device. "Commander, the line to Admiral Rax is open," Harrow announced. Eliana turned and faced the holographic image of Admiral Rax, his features marked by time and the burden of command. "Admiral, we've received a distress signal from the Terran sector. Advice?" Admiral Rax's eyes narrowed. "That's unexpected. The last report suggested stability and prosperity in that sector. We need to investigate. It could be a trap, or it could be a genuine cry for help. Either way, the Ghost Fleet might finally have a purpose after all these centuries." Eliana nodded. "We'll prepare to break cover. It's been a long time since these ships have seen action. Let's hope they remember how to fight." The Admiral gave a wry smile. "They will. They were built for this. Keep me updated, Commander." With the communication cut, Eliana turned to her crew. "Prepare all systems for departure. We break from the nebula in 2 hours. I want every ship in this fleet ready for whatever we might face." The crew saluted crisply, a renewed sense of purpose igniting in their eyes. Eliana felt it too, a stirring of excitement, a spark that had lain dormant within her for too long. As the Ghost Fleet powered up, ancient engines humming back to life, Eliana watched the stars. Somewhere out there, someone needed their help, and after centuries of waiting in the shadows, humanity's secret fleet was ready to emerge and face whatever threats lay beyond the nebula. As the ships aligned and prepared for the jump to hyperspace, Eliana felt the weight of history on her shoulders. They were no longer just a myth. They were the galaxy's silent guardians, and they were finally answering the call to arms. The journey ahead would be fraught with danger, but Eliana knew one thing for sure. The Ghost Fleet was ready to make history once again. As the Ghost Fleet transitioned from the depths of the nebula of shadows, they set their course for the Terran sector, precise vectors calculated to intersect with the source of the distress signal. The bridge of the Eternal Vigil was a flurry of activity, sensors recalibrated and weapon systems undergoing rigorous checks. Commander Eliana Voss stood at the helm, her gaze fixed on the forward screens displaying the star-studded expanse of space that stretched before them. "Entering the Terran sector in 3, 2, 1. The navigator counted down. Space around the fleet warped momentarily as they exited hyperspace, arriving near the coordinates of the distress beacon. "Visual on way station Zeta 16, the sensor operator announced, his voice steady despite the underlying tension. The way station, a small but vital outpost on the trade route, appeared on the screen, its structure showing signs of recent conflict, scorch marks from laser fire and debris floating nearby. Eliana turned to her tactical officer. Analysis? Scans indicate no active ships in immediate vicinity, Commander. However, there are life signs aboard the station. It appears undermanned but operational. Eliana pondered their next move. Launch a reconnaissance drone. I want eyes inside that station. If there are survivors, we need to know the situation before we move in. Minutes later, the drone transmitted live footage back to the fleet. The interior of the station was dimly lit, emergency lights casting long shadows across the corridors. Bodies lay scattered, evidence of a brutal assault. However, no attackers were visible, leaving the true nature of the conflict a mystery. Commander, I'm receiving a transmission, Harrow reported, his expression concerned. It's from the station. On the screen, a haggard face appeared, that of a middle-aged man in a security uniform, his badge identifying him as Captain Miles Jensen. This is Captain Jensen of Waystation Zeta-16, he began, his voice hoarse. We're under siege by unknown forces. They hit us hard and fast, took out our communications before we could get a full distress signal out. We have civilians on board. Any assistance? The transmission crackled and cut out momentarily before resuming. Imperative. They haven't breached the inner sanctum yet, but it's only a matter of time. Eliana responded without hesitation. Captain Jensen, this is Commander Voss of the Ghost Fleet. We received your distress call. Help is on the way. Turning to her crew, Eliana issued her commands. Prepare a strike team. I'm leading the operation myself. We need to secure that station and rescue any survivors. As the team geared up, Eliana felt the familiar rush of adrenaline. This was what the Ghost Fleet had been awakened for, to intervene where others could not, to serve as the shield in the darkest hours. The dropships were ready, and as they disembarked from the eternal vigil, Eliana looked back at her ship, a silent promise hanging in the air. They would not let this outpost fall. They would stand as the guardians once more, no matter the odds. Approaching the station, the team braced for resistance, but instead of a welcoming committee of hostiles, they were met with eerie silence. The hatch to the station creaked open, revealing the ravaged interior. Stepping inside, Eliana and her team moved with precision, clearing sections methodically. It wasn't long before they found survivors, civilians huddled in a fortified room, faces marked with relief at the sight of the rescue team. Commander Voss! Captain Jensen stepped forward, extending a hand, which Eliana shook firmly. Thank you. We thought we were forgotten. Eliana smiled tightly. Not on my watch, Captain. Let's get your people to safety. Then we can discuss who did this. As they escorted the survivors back to the dropships, Eliana's mind was already racing ahead. Who had attacked the way station? And why? The answers were out there somewhere, hidden in the vast expanse of space, and Eliana was determined to uncover them. Back aboard the Eternal Vigil, the survivors of Waystation Zeta-16 were tended to by the medical team, while Eliana and Captain Jensen reviewed the security footage from the attack. The images were grainy, distorted by the aftermath of the assault, but what they revealed sent a chill down Eliana's spine. The attackers were unlike any known faction in the galaxy. Clad in dark, angular armor that seemed to absorb light, they moved with eerie coordination, striking with precision that suggested a highly trained force. No insignias, no colors, just a silent, deadly efficiency. Have you ever seen anything like this before? Eliana asked, her eyes not leaving the screen. Jensen shook his head, his face lined with fatigue. No, and I've been in the frontier security forces for over 2 decades. These aren't pirates or typical raiders, they're something else. Eliana nodded, her thoughts racing. The nature of the attack, the sophistication of the tactics, it hinted at a shadowy threat, possibly emerging from the uncharted regions of the galaxy. She needed more information. Harrow, cross-reference these visuals with all known military databases. Look for any match or similar text signatures, she commanded. As Harrow worked, Eliana convened with her senior staff. We're dealing with an unknown enemy. This was a precise hit, not a random act of piracy. They wanted something from this station, or they wanted to send a message. The strategic implications were clear. If this force could strike so efficiently at a well-guarded way station, then no one in the galaxy was safe. The need to identify and counter this threat was paramount. Hours later, Harrow returned with a report. "Commander, there's no exact match in any known database. However, there are vague similarities to tech used during the Forgotten Wars, documented in ancient archives." The Forgotten Wars? Eliana's historical knowledge clicked into place. Those were conflicts so devastating that most records were sealed or destroyed. If this enemy was using technology from that era, it suggested a deeply buried origin. "Reopen those archives, Harrow. Anything you can find could be crucial," she said. As the archives were accessed, a clearer picture began to form. The technology from the Forgotten Wars was experimental, designed for stealth and devastating assaults. It was a Pandora's box that, once opened, had nearly torn the galaxy apart. The Council of Systems had agreed to bury it in hopes of preventing its misuse. But someone had remembered. Someone had dug deep into the shadows of history and resurrected these ghostly technologies. Eliana gathered her thoughts, the weight of command heavy on her shoulders. The galaxy was standing on the brink of a possible resurgence of the darkest times, and the Ghost Fleet, once merely a myth, was now the first line of defense. "We need to find out who is behind this, where they are, and what they want," Eliana addressed her crew. "We are no longer just shadows ourselves. We are the Watchers in the night." The decision was made to trace the attackers' escape route using the scant sensor data from the way station. Every ship in the fleet was put on high alert, their sensors extended to the fullest range. As the fleet maneuvered through space, tracing ion trails and dissecting encrypted signals, Eliana felt the universe shift around them. This was more than a rescue mission now. It was a quest to unearth a secret that could either save or shatter the galaxy. The pursuit led them to a distant sector, marked by celestial anomalies and sparse starlight, a perfect hiding place for those who wished to operate in the shadows. As the Ghost Fleet approached, the tension was palpable. "Prepare all hands for a potential engagement," Eliana ordered. "This is where the trail leads, and this is where we face whatever darkness awaits." The fleet moved forward, silent as the void around them, ready to bring light to the darkest corners of the galaxy. The Ghost Fleet drifted closer to the obscure sector, their sensors peering into the depths of space, probing for the faintest echo of the mysterious attackers. The sector, a cluster of dying stars and black holes, was notorious among spacefarers for its unpredictable gravitational shifts and sparse navigational data. It was a place where even the brave dared not linger. Eliana stood on the bridge of the Eternal Vigil, her eyes scanning the live feed from the forward scanners. "Anything yet, Harrow?" "Negative, Commander. The sector's gravitational fields are interfering with our scans. We may need to deploy probes to get a clearer picture," Harrow replied, his fingers dancing across the holographic interface. "Do it! Deploy the probes in a wide net. I want every rock and ice chunk in this sector accounted for," Eliana commanded, her tone brooking no argument. The fleet launched dozens of probes, each programmed to navigate the treacherous astrophysical landscape. Slowly, a map of the sector began to form on the main screen, revealing the hidden crevices and potential hideouts. As the fleet waited for the probes to relay their data, a subtle shift occurred in the ambient noise of the ship. Eliana felt it, a slight vibration through the deck, a signal so faint that only years of deep space command could attune one to its significance. "Commander, we have something," the sensor operator announced, his voice a mix of excitement and tension. "One of our probes has triggered an alert. It's detected a hidden structure on an asteroid in the dead belt, heavily shielded and radiating low levels of energy." "Show me," Eliana said sharply. The image on the screen zoomed into a nondescript asteroid, its surface rough and jagged. Concealed within was an artificial structure, cleverly masked to blend with its surroundings. "That could be their base," Eliana murmured, studying the readouts. "Harrow, prepare for a covert approach. I want us cloaked and silent." The fleet recalibrated, slipping into the asteroid belt with the stealth of spectral wraiths. As they approached the suspected base, the tension on the bridge mounted. Every crew member knew the stakes of their mission. Eliana initiated a tight beam communication to her captains. "We may be walking into a hornet's nest. I want full combat readiness. Weapons hot, but hold fire until we know what we're dealing with." As the eternal vigil drew near, a series of coded pulses were detected emanating from the asteroid. A silent alarm system, sophisticated and ancient. Eliana recognized the pattern. It was similar to encryption methods used in the Forgotten Wars. "They know we're here," Eliana assessed. "Or at least, they know someone is. All ships, initiate electronic warfare protocols. Jam their signals. No one in or out until we have control." Under the cover of electronic jamming, a boarding party was assembled. Eliana chose to lead the team herself, donning her combat suit with the practiced ease of a veteran. As the boarding shuttle detached from the Eternal Vigil and maneuvered towards the asteroid, every heart aboard the fleet pounded in unison. The shuttle docked silently with the hidden base. The hatch opened with a hiss, revealing a corridor lit only by emergency lighting. Eliana stepped forward, her weapon at the ready, her team close behind. They moved through the base, a labyrinth of cold metal and shadows. Signs of recent habitation were everywhere. Discarded data pads, half-eaten meals, a sense of hurried evacuation. Finally, they reached the control room. The screens were still active, data flowing across them in streams of code and schematics. Eliana approached the main console, her eyes narrowing as she deciphered the information. "It's a surveillance outpost," she realized aloud. "They've been monitoring trade routes, military movements, even communications among the core worlds. But why?" Before she could ponder further, a hidden door slid open at the far end of the room. Out stepped a figure, clad in the same dark armor as the attackers, hands raised in a gesture of peace or surrender. "I can answer that," the figure said, voice modulated and cold. "But first we need to talk, Commander Voss." Eliana kept her weapon trained on the newcomer, her mind racing. This was the breakthrough they needed, but at what cost? As she stared into the visor of the armored figure, she knew the galaxy would never be the same again. Whatever secrets lay buried here, they were about to come to light, and she must tread carefully. Eliana's finger rested lightly on the trigger, her senses heightened to the subtlest shift in the armored figure's stance. "Speak quickly," she demanded, her voice echoing slightly in the austere room. The figure lowered their hands slowly, a sign of truce but not submission. "My name is Kale Maureen. I represent the Ascendant, a collective that believes the galaxy must be prepared for a threat beyond your current comprehension," he began, his voice a harmonic blend of synthetic and human tones. Eliana's gaze didn't waver. Prepared? By attacking neutral way stations and killing civilians? Kale paused, the weight of the accusation hanging between them. "The attack was not sanctioned by our command. We seek only to awaken the galaxy to the lurking dangers, not to become one ourselves. The operatives who conducted that raid went rogue, driven by their own desperation to provoke a quicker galactic response." "And you expect me to believe that?" Eliana's skepticism was palpable. Kale took a cautious step forward. "Believe or not, Commander, the threat is real. Ancient technologies unearthed from the time scars of the Forgotten Wars have been activated. What you saw at Waystation Zeta-16 is but a shadow of what's to come." Eliana considered his words, her strategic mind parsing truth from potential deception. "You have evidence of this threat?" Kale motioned to the console. "Allow me." Reluctantly, Eliana signaled her team to lower their weapons slightly, watching as Kale interacted with the console. The screens flickered, then displayed a series of holographic images. Vast, dark structures in space, alien in architecture, pulsating with an ominous energy. "These are the Harbingers," Kale explained. "Dormant relics from a bygone era now stirring. We believe they are devices of mass destruction left over from a cosmic war that predates recorded history." "Why come to us? Why now?" Eliana asked, her interest piqued despite her reservations. "Because the Ghost Fleet has something we need. Your ship's old world tech is uniquely capable of interacting with Harbinger systems. We've tried and failed with modern technology. Your fleet is the key." Eliana absorbed this revelation, the scope of the crisis unfolding before her growing clearer and more daunting. And if we refuse? Then I fear the galaxy will be defenseless against what is to come. You've seen just a fragment of their potential wrath, Kale replied solemnly. The standoff eased slightly as mutual understanding, or at least mutual necessity, dawned. Eliana turned to her second-in-command, signaling to maintain a watchful eye but to stand down from combat readiness. "All right, Kale Morin of the Ascendant, let's suppose we entertain this alliance," Eliana proposed, her tone still laced with caution. "What's our first move together?" Kale's mask seemed to reflect a ghost of a smile, a trick of light and shadow. "There is a Harbinger site active within the Helix Nebula. We must reach it before its systems fully awaken. I can guide you, but it will require combining our resources and information." Eliana contemplated the star map where the Helix Nebula swirled, a maelstrom of cosmic forces and hidden dangers. She made a decision that felt like stepping into the unknown, her command instincts aligning with the dire necessity presented. "Prepare the fleet," she commanded her crew. "Set a course for the Helix Nebula. We make for the Harbinger site with Kale as our guide." As the Ghost Fleet recalibrated its trajectory, Eliana felt the old thrill of command mixed with the uncertainty of the unknown. This alliance was a gamble, with stakes higher than any poker table in the galaxy. But it was a gamble she was willing to take, for the safety of the galaxy hung in the balance. As the ships began their surge through space, Eliana and Kale stood side by side, watching the stars shift. Whatever lay ahead, they would face it together, either as newfound allies or as foes forced into a fragile truce by circumstance and necessity. The Ghost Fleet surged toward the Helix Nebula, its myriad colors a backdrop to the gravest mission yet undertaken by humanity's clandestine protectors. The bridge of the Eternal Vigil was a tapestry of tension and resolve as Eliana Voss stood with Kale Morin, their alliance an uneasy bridge between ancient secrets and galactic necessity. "Approaching the coordinates of the Harbinger site," announced the navigator, his voice steady despite the stakes. The nebula loomed large on the view screens, a swirling chaos of gas and dust illuminated by the brilliant cores of newborn stars. "Engage cloaking devices and reduce signature emissions. I want us invisible to anything that might be watching," Eliana instructed, her gaze fixed on the celestial storm ahead. As the fleet penetrated the nebula, the space around them became a whirlpool of electromagnetic distortions and gravitational anomalies. The ships, guided by old-world tech and ascendant insights, navigated the hazards with a precision born of necessity. "Disturbance ahead," Harrow reported, his sensors picking up unusual energy fluctuations deep within the nebula. "It matches the signatures Kale described. The Harbinger is close." "Visuals," Eliana commanded, and the screen shifted to display a massive structure, partially obscured by the nebula's dense clouds. It was unlike anything known to human engineering, vast, dark, and pulsating with a sinister light. "This is it," Kale confirmed, his voice betraying a hint of awe. "The Harbinger's heart. We must deactivate it before it reaches full operational capacity." Eliana nodded, her decision clear. "Prepare for deployment. Kale, you're with me. We'll take a strike team to the core." The operation was risky, the variables numerous. As they boarded the shuttle, Eliana reviewed the plan with her team, each member selected for their skills and their courage. The shuttle maneuvered through the nebula, dodging debris and electromagnetic bursts, until they reached the Harbinger's outer shell. They landed in a docking bay, eerily open and inviting. The team disembarked, moving through corridors that hummed with alien energy. The architecture was a puzzle, its logic alien and its scale immense. As they reached the core, they found it protected by a security system of unknown design but unmistakable intent. Kale stepped forward, interfacing his device with the alien console. "I can disable it, but it's going to take time." "Time we might not have," Eliana said, checking her weapon. As if on cue, the sound of clanking metal echoed through the halls, the Harbinger's defense mechanisms activating. "Defensive positions!" Eliana ordered. The team formed a perimeter, their weapons trained on the approaching threat. Shadowy figures emerged, their forms blurred but their intentions deadly. The firefight was intense, each shot echoing through the ancient structure. Eliana fought alongside her team, every move a testament to her resolve. Meanwhile, Kale worked feverishly, his fingers a blur. As the last of the defenders fell, Kale exclaimed, "Got it! The core is shutting down!" The humming of the Harbinger ceased, the lights dimming as the ancient construct powered down. Silence fell, heavy and absolute. "We did it," Eliana breathed, relief washing over her. "Let's get back to the fleet. We need to report and make sure this thing stays dead." The return to the fleet was a quiet procession, each member of the team processing the weight of their accomplishment. As they docked with the Eternal Vigil, cheers broke out among the crew. They had faced the unknown and emerged victorious. In the aftermath, as reports were filed and the fleet took position around the now dormant Harbinger, Eliana and Kale reviewed the data they had gathered. "We've averted a crisis, but there may be more Harbingers out there," Kale warned. "This alliance between us may need to endure." Eliana looked out at the stars, her thoughts far-reaching. "Then let's be ready. We'll continue to watch, to guard, and to protect. This fleet will be the shield against the darkness as long as the galaxy needs us." The Ghost Fleet remained vigilant, a silent sentinel in the ever-shifting tapestry of space, ready to respond to any threat, from within the galaxy or beyond. Their journey continued, a testament to the courage and resolve of those who would stand against the shadows.